Empire. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conn Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you are watching us, oh, by the way, you can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my guest. If you're not watching on YouTube, well, it's Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. And I haven't talked to Nicki on the show for a little while, and certainly not since Eric Bieniemy was hired. A lot of things going on. We're going to cover all the things on the field going on. Not going to get into ownership stuff, not today. That's for down the road. Nothing really new happening. All sorts of rumors floating around out there. Keep your head on a swivel with all that stuff. Anyway, Nicki is joining me from the Combine, where she's been there all week, working hard for you guys. And just, first of all, explain what the Combine experience is like, because it's definitely, I guess, the definition of a grind. Explain to people what it's like for a reporter.
It's an experience, and forgive me, I have a cough because you don't get much sleep on these trips because of the schedule. So, it's nothing but sort of waiting around to see who you see in lobbies and bars, because most of the coaches and executives stay at one or two hotels and kind of loiter around the lobby of those. So you're kind of sitting around and kind of waiting to see who you see, but there's also player interviews. They put them up at podiums at scheduled times, and they kind of divide them up by position groups, and you have about 10 minutes, in these big scrums with other media members to interview them. Same with coaches and GMs, at least the ones that, volunteer to participate, which most do. And then, the coaches and executives, they have late night interviews with prospects. The afternoons they're watching workouts, then they're having formal and informal interviews with players, and that can run up until like 11:30 at night. And then these guys want to get dinner, and then they want to go out and kind of unwind, and that means, hanging out in bars till 4 a.m. So of course a lot of media members go because it's a good place to kind of meet people face to face, and informally away from the media setting. So, you can be out late just trying to network and meet folks. And then, by 8 a.m. you're back at it. So it is a 24/7 process for about a week here. So, yeah, you can hear my voice is not great. So,
and it is like, that is a big thing, is the face-to-face time. And it's also the agents are there, and you have assistant coaches there. And so there's a lot of people that you get to network with and see. It's also become so big over the years that it's sometimes hard to get done what I think you need to get done, because there's it's probably, how many media, probably 900
at least, and the schedule is geared toward the TV production. So they want the workouts, in prime time or close to prime time, which means the interviews with players and coaches are later in the day. In previous years, this was all like in the morning, afternoon, and then, things were on a more normal-ish schedule. But yeah, a lot of it's geared toward TV production, and, they open some events to fans now. You can watch the bench press. There's, similar to the Super Bowl, there's sort of a combine experience for fans. So it's become quite the production. It's the second biggest event for the league behind the Super Bowl, which is kind of funny to me.
I think they could probably boost the ratings if you did like a media bench press thing. Like, I'd love to see Ben Standing.
Nobody could do it.
Ben Standing's reps on the 225. How many?
I'd give him at least two.
You might be able to get two. Peter Phillips, I'm not sure they're getting that bar up.
Yeah, they're not getting that bar up.
So, anyway, what's been, so Ron Rivera spoke at the podium on Tuesday, Mark Mayhew on Wednesday. I don't know if there's like a whole lot new coming out of there, but what were some of your takeaways from those interviews?
Yeah, not a whole lot new. They keep things pretty close to the vest at this time of year, especially if they're having discussions with agents or other teams about potential deals or kind of how they're envisioning the roster shaking out. But a lot of it, they're still kind of going through that process. They haven't even finished forming their full offensive staff.
Right.
They still have to hire a receivers coach.
Right. And
So
a
they're still
quality control coach too. So
yeah, exactly. Got to get those.
power to the QC guys.
Yeah. So they're still doing interviews with people out here, but a lot of the same stuff that they said in previous weeks. With Sam Howell, he's going to enter the offseason as a starting quarterback and he'll have every chance to win that job going forward, and a lot of it is, he's the only quarterback on the books right now for 2023. So obviously he's going to enter, the offseason as a projected starter, but he's definitely going to have to earn it. They keep saying they think he can. They liked what they saw in one game, but again, it is one game. The game against Dallas, where he seemed to play pretty well outside of that interception. But they do want to add a veteran to the room. This is something they've said from the outset too. They've not given the impression that they're looking at any high priced veteran, though anything could change. I use that caveat with any team in the NFL. But it does not look like they're interested in going that route, which means they're going to hire some sort of, kind of a middle tier veteran or is more of a mentor that somebody, Sam can learn from and, kind of bring in another younger guy to kind of fill out the room. But they want to add competition. But as of now, and again, Sam Howell will have to earn the job. It's kind of his to lose at this point is how I
because it's funny because it seemed like some people thought that there was a backtrack on it, but they've been consistent with that message.
They have said the same thing the entire time. It's one of the few areas where they have been consistent about their messaging, but yeah, they have said the same thing, like that he is our starter going into camp. He's going to have to earn it. We'll add competition to the room. We want to add a veteran, it's kind of where they're at.
So they changed quarterbacks coach. You got Tavita Pritchard coming in as a quarterbacks coach. And I haven't even thought about this too much, but it would seem like they're trying to keep things, they wanted to keep things as similar for Howell as possible.
Yeah.
They've kind of gone away from that. How important do you think it might be to bring back Taylor Heineke, just to have somebody in the room that he is comfortable and familiar with? You have a new coordinator, you have a new quarterbacks coach, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, bringing back Taylor Heineke makes sense no matter what. The guys like him. He's a guy that sure would love to be the starter, but can be a good backup and be a great teammate. He knows Sam well. He knows the team well. He's going to play hard. He's the kind of backup that can step in and win a game, obviously, if you need him. He's the consummate teammate. So to me, bringing him back makes total sense if he wants to come back. If he doesn't have a better offer somewhere else. So yeah, I think that would make so much sense for Sam and the team. And I mean, I believe that even, last season they should have tried to get him back in any capacity, whether it's a starting role or whatever, just resign him because he's a great guy to have in that room. And backup quarterbacks, in my mind, are the second most valuable, that's the second most valuable position on the roster, you know? So
yeah,
that would be huge for Sam.
I think there's I don't know how strong a chance there is, but there's a definite chance of him returning. So, but I think it's like, we're talking that level of quarterback. They want to bring in somebody who can start, somebody who could be, if they're not starting, is comfortable with it. And I think the benefit for Heineke, and, it's funny because I think, there was a school of thought that maybe he has to leave because, the first minute that Howell struggles, they're going to call for Heineke. I don't know that that's the case, because I think that Heineke, his 2 years here, he has shown exactly who he is and what he is as a quarterback. The key for me is he likes Howell and he's okay. I think he'd be okay backing him up.
Yeah. And that's not always easy to find, in quarterbacks, finding the guy that, is competitive, is a good teammate, is okay being a backup. Sure, would love to be a starter because who wouldn't, but has that sort of mindset where he's, happy to sort of mentor the younger guy in front of him. And, and that's, I don't think that should be taken for granted. I think getting somebody like getting him specifically would make a ton of sense.
And then the other part too is one of the things that I don't think this is necessarily a surprise, But again, I've been asked a lot, like, would they take a tight end first in the draft? Would they
Sure.
take it? They like their tight ends. That's the other thing that
Yep.
seems to have stood out with what from Rivera and even Mayhew.
Yep. They do. They do. I mean, they have a lot of young guys that are still pretty unproven. I mean, like Ronnie Rogers, I think he's a really good player. This is his first year as a tight end last season.
Like what he can do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of promise there. I think getting Logan Thomas healthy, I do kind of wonder if, would they try to, restructure? See, I haven't heard anything to this extent.
Right.
So this is purely speculation on my part, where they try to kind of finagle the money there a little bit. But here's the thing and I was thinking about this as a first round tight end is, that position, does it carry the monetary value of a first round pick? That is an expensive pick. Those 4-year fully guaranteed deals for that position, does it have the value that you need for what you're spending? And to me, I would always be a little skeptical. I know, you don't see too many in the top 10, that's for sure. I think Kyle Pitts was the first in a long time behind, since Vernon Davis, really. But that's the part where I'd be like, if it's a deep class and you want to add to that room, you don't need it in the first round,
Right.
And they do have talent there, so it's not, to me, it doesn't seem to be a huge glaring need. I would be, I know it's not the sexy pick, but offensive line first round.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. Like especially at 16, I'm a-okay with that. And not that my opinion matters, although I'll be honest, Nikki, between you and I think my opinion should matter more, but they disagree with that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's just between
I'll relay that to Ron later. Don't worry.
But I do agree with that. And I also think with the tight ends too, and one of the things I think it was Mayhew brought this up on during his session, which was that he said Cole Turner had one of the best off seasons of a young tight end that he's seen.
Yeah. He just got no reps.
He got hurt, and then he got hurt, and that took it away.
Right. He got no time on field really.
Right. But for people wondering, like, when you look at the group, you have to look at what could they become versus what are they right now when you're looking at, like, where should you add with this pick or that pick. But I'm with you, offensive line, and would you include center in that at 16?
Yes. I mean, yes, I think Chase really is a very good player. I think there is certainly a health concern. They're two starters, their starter and backup have suffered pretty severe season-ending injuries in consecutive seasons. Like, you got to find some continuity there. That's such a big deal too. Yeah, especially with a young quarterback. You can't be cycling through 5 centers like that. It's tough. And a new system, you want some continuity there. So, I mean, that's an important position. Cornerback too, I think, is very important. Yes. I'll say DB, like whether it's corner or safety, because I think that's another deep group in this draft class.
But I think with their top 3 safeties, they're good.
Yes.
I think they like what they have. I think corner is an absolute, like, you've got to get a high level corner, and there's some good corners in this class. You can go into the second round and get a good corner in this group.
You could, though. I really like that Devin Witherspoon.
That's my guy.
Yeah, he seems like a Jack Del Rio guy. I mean, he's smallish, but heck of a player and loves to hit. He's got like a little defo in him.
He does, and he's tough and he competes. And he's the guy that's been on my radar for a while. So, but I had my fear for them would be that he goes higher. But the corners are all over the place. Like, it could be, some people have Joy Porter here, or some people have him down over here. I seen Witherspoon down here, and now he's up here. It's
going to change so much between now and April too.
I think it's going to be
how the agency shakes out too.
And I think it's a fit thing as well, because I don't know that every corner is going to fit every system that you want to play. So then it's like, what are you looking for? But I like Witherspoon a lot, and if they got him, I think that'd be a good pick. If they, but there's also, like, it depends on Sam Cosmi, and Rivera brought up that they're still kind of working through that.
Right. I mean, I could totally see him shifting inside to guard.
Yes.
Totally.
But then you need a tackle. And so do you get that in free agency? Do you get that in the draft? I mean, and here's the other thing, Nikki, like, how many because everybody wants to draft 15 offensive linemen. And I don't blame them. I know why they say that. But how many young players do you want on that line when you have a young quarterback? Because young players on that line lead to transition.
Right. No, and that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always important to keep some veterans there. Having Charles Leno on the left side, I think is especially important. But yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, everybody talks about building the offensive line through the draft, but you got to consider how long that really takes, how much time this team takes, and kind of where they're at in this rebuild, So I think that's a very good point.
I mean, you look at Andrew Thomas for the Giants, he was abysmal his first year, really good now.
Right. It takes time.
So that's why I'm just guessing that you get a couple guys in the draft. You've got to, and I think they also, if it hits well for them, that a guy like Chris Paul or Sidney Charles, if he ever stays healthy, would finally hit. And then it's like, do you get a tackle? Do you sign a tackle? And there are some interesting tackles and free agent guards. So do you get one there and you go in the draft for a couple other guys? And then, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And the same thing with Logan and Chase are in that same position where are they going to go with it? They seem to be excited about what they saw from Logan as a pass catcher at the end of the year. I think as a blocker, I wonder if that's where the knee affected him more, but they seem to be excited about that. What about I haven't talked to you or I'm here about your initial impressions of Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I mean, I hate to make this comparison because you don't want to shut down what everybody else has reported or whatever, but you see all the reports of, why hasn't he been, why has he been overlooked for head coaching opportunities? Does he not interview well, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, he was pretty impassioned in his, introductory presser with us. And he seemed to impress a lot of the coaches. Martin Mayhew seemed especially impressed. So I think they really like the passion he brings. Certainly the experience. I mean, his resume is loaded. And just the experience of working in Andy Reid's system. Like you said earlier, Ron's initial intent was to not do, make a wholesale change to the offense, but it's kind of hard not to when you bring in a guy like Eric Bieniemy and you're bringing his version of the West Coast system too. I mean, that's going to bring some pretty massive changes, terminology changes. He's bringing in coaches that he really trusts, that he has connections with. So, I've been impressed with him so far. I'm really curious to see how quickly they can get up to speed in this new scheme, and kind of watch him kind of build those relationships with players, because I think that's ultimately going to be key, as it is with every coach.
Right.
How does he build that trust with guys, and how quickly can they sort of get this all together?
It's funny. How much do you think? Because obviously Scott Turner is a very different personality. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to make it just because we don't know with Bieniemy when he gets, we'll see what he does during the season then. But how much do you think that this offense could use that? He talks about the accountability, and then you talk about the energy and the passion. How much can this offense use that?
I think they need that so much. I mean, I think, kind of the narrative around the offense for years now is that that's been sort of the lagging group. The defense had a bad year in 2021, but, the other 2 years under Jack Del Rio, they've been pretty good. It's the offense, they're not consistent. They can't, they're not scoring. They're not producing. They don't have a consistent quarterback. They're not getting the ball to their key playmakers. So the narrative has kind of been on them as sort of the weakest link of the group. So to have somebody who's kind of impassioned about it, and kind of brings that energy, I think is huge. I think that group could use a little bit of fire, because they do have talent over there. Their receiving core that's a talented group, and they haven't been getting the most out of them at all. I mean, Terry's numbers should be, in my mind, sort of otherworldly with, the talent he has. He's just, he's played with 7, 8 different quarterbacks and different systems. So
here's one thing, and I looked up the stat yesterday for a story I wrote on ESPN.com, but just about some other questions they faced on offense. So, questions are, is it really Sam Howell? Are they going to fix the line? And how do you get the receivers more involved? And one stat I found was that, I looked at the first and second targets for receivers. Mm-hmm. in the NFL, just first and second quarter targets, because like that's like early in the game, the game's still kind of back and forth. Fourth quarter, if you're throwing a lot, you get a guy's going to get it. Terry was 30th in the NFL in targets in the first and second quarter combined.
Yeah.
That's inexcusable.
Yeah, it's been a years long problem. I feel like every year we've gone up there and like, how do you get Terry the ball more? How do you get Terry the ball earlier in games? Like, yeah, no, you paid him, $70+ million. You got to get him the ball. And then you got to find more ways to use Curtis Samuel. Jahan Dotson was really coming on near the end of the season and getting, Brian Robinson the ball, getting AG, using him more in space. You got to find ways to get all these guys involved because you have a dynamic group there that can really cause problems.
They do. And I think Jahan's going to have a really good year, as I really like what he can do. Deron Payne franchise tag. Obviously, no surprise there. What do you think happens there?
I have more optimism that they can get a deal done, more than I ever did with Brandon Sheriff. It didn't seem like that was
never going to happen.
Yeah, but they keep saying they want to get a deal done. I think this past season certainly opened their eyes to a lot of things. I know the defensive line coaches love Deron Payne. Yeah. He works his butt off in practice, and last year he finally started to finish, and that showed the coaches quite a bit. So I think they would like to keep him on a longer term deal. You just got to make the money work. That's a lot of money to allocate to one positional group up front. And then what does that mean for Montez? He's the next one up, and then you got to think about Chase's 5th year. They got to decide that by May 1st. Yeah. So. Get the sense they want to keep him. We'll see if
the other thing, because you always say, well, was his contract year? I felt like this was a culmination of where he was headed, more so than he just turned it on.
I don't think he suddenly turned on the burners because
I think he's always
more money. I don't think it always happens like that. I mean, it's a convenient narrative, like, oh, he's about to get money. Sure, he's playing well. I don't think guys just turn it on and off like that. I think a lot of it is, by your 4th year, 5th year, things are really starting to click for you, The one I have 2 words that where I'll run counter to that everybody listening here is going to agree with. Albert Haynesworth. He turned down during his career, and he got. But I think with Deron is not Albert Haynesworth. Correct.
He's been a hard worker, and the sacks come and go. 1 year you may get 11.5 in there. That's hard for an interior guard. He may only get 6.5 next year and be as effective just without the sacks. So I don't think it's a case of is he going to get paid and then fall off? You never know, but I would wager on him continuing to play at a solid level. Nothing else. Last thing. Yep. So the NFLPA comes out with a survey from talking to players. I think they talked to 1,300, and they had to answer about your own team facilities and all that. This team did not fare well.
They did not. They did not. It was about facilities. It was about their general operations, their treatment of families, kind of how they support families, throughout the season. And they ranked last. The one caveat, their strength and conditioning coaches were tied for first. But everywhere else, it was pretty poor. I mean, the facilities, obviously.
But you know what? You know what's funny, Nicki? Because obviously I've been there for a little while. That facility is so much better than it used to be.
That's scary.
Still,
John, the last time we were there, that gravel parking lot where we park, which is the first thing you see when you come in, there was a broken down car with one of the tires missing, just sitting there. Somebody left it there. That's the first thing you see when you go.
I know.
A gravel lot, a broken down car.
I mean, I used to tell that to when Tony was the PR director, and the lot was a mess. I'm like, Tony, this is the first thing people see. But inside the facility, it is so much. When I first started doing it, and for years, it wasn't until they got the deal with Richmond to have training camp down there where they got money from the state to go down there, and they used that money to upgrade some of the facility stuff. But it's just it's a small place, and it's never going to be anything other than what it is. But I know that they put money into the fields. They do have the team psychologist. I was surprised about the nutrition aspect because Whenever we go
Yeah,
down
the
to
food looks
practice,
good there. The chef, they
it
got a
smells
legit
good.
chef. Yeah.
I haven't heard complaints about the food.
No, I haven't either. I was surprised about that one too.
Yeah.
But
Do you think, how much do you think that factors in with if you're a free agent? How much do you think this will help, hurt, matter? Well, it's not
I mean,
going to
I
help.
think players look at that. If they voted on it, I think they'll look at that. But I think ultimately money talks, you know. So
Listen, if the Bengals rated really low. The Patriots were in the bottom
the
third.
Chiefs were 29th.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like it's all the really bad teams at the very end, and you know no, it was a mixed bag, and like there's gripes with the top team was Minnesota, right? Minnesota and Miami had A's across the board. There were like 8 categories for facilities and operations. Those 2 teams had A's across the board. I think the Raiders were third. They had like 1B.
The Raiders play in Vegas. That's not fair.
Yeah, and they just got a brand new stadium. Yeah, so it's going to fluctuate from year to year. They said they're going to do this annually, so it's going to fluctuate. And it could, like the Giants, they said it was pretty poor before Dable came there, so a lot can change year to year.
Right. You get more of those slogans on the walls in the facility. Maybe that does change. I don't know, but I do like it is. But you're right. Like in the end, for people wondering, like it's always first and foremost about money.
Yeah, always.
What do you think? What else? What else do you like? If you had to rank like the top 3 for a free agent, how would you rank that? Like as far as what matters?
Money. If they're a contender, if they're a winning team, and fit. Like, do you?
Yeah.
Would I be a starter? Would I be a good fit in the system? That type of thing.
And I would throw, and my other one I'd throw in there would be locale. If you're, where are you, I think certain teams may have a harder time because of where they're located, but that seems to be something. And then it's because then if you're married and you have kids, how's your family going to fare in that area? So I think that's also a factor. I don't know. I mean, these facilities have been bad for a long time, and they were worse and they were signing big time free agents. So I don't know if it's going to matter, but I do think it shows the work that needs to be done here going forward. And I know there's some people here who cannot wait to get to a new facility, but we're still talking 5-6 years. That's a whole nother show, Nicki.
Another show. Yes.
So listen, I appreciate your time. I know you're fighting something there. So I appreciate your time coming on as always. And I always enjoy talking to you. Thanks, Nicki. Oh, and by the way, because you did write a story on that NFLPA survey. So if you want to check it out at WashingtonPost.com and tell them where else they can find you, Nicki.
You can find me on Twitter at Nicki Jhabvala, NICKIJHABVALA, or on WashingtonPost.com.
There you go. Thanks, Nicki.
Thanks.